Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. Boy, oh boy, in boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Jet lag, jet lag, jet lag. Let me do this here real quick. Let me stretch this across. You got Kaye traveling internationally to fight in the United States, and I'm surprised she got here like 2 days ago. You know what I'm saying? She should have got out here. You can't just arrive on fight week, man. I'm telling you, it takes a while for bodies to acclimate to the time change. I'm telling you from being a guy who's traveled just like a lot of y'all all over the world. And I've traveled sometimes on 20-plus-hour flights, arrived in another country at like 2 in the morning, had to be up for briefings at 6. And let me tell you, when you arrive in a country at 2 in the morning, don't mean you're in bed at 2. You got to get all your goddamn bags, get over to the goddamn hotel or whatever it is. Then you finally try to get something to eat, shower, go to bed. Sometimes you got to get up at like 5 or 6. You don't get in bed till like 4. Horrible 2 hours of sleep. They try to make it through horrible ass mundane death by PowerPoint briefings. So Kaye Scott traveling internationally to fight in the United States. I'm just telling you, jet lag and travel fatigue could become a part of the performance equation. Although it would be impossible to say beforehand that it will hurt her, I'm telling you from my experience, I think it will. Long haul travel can disrupt sleep, alertness, reaction time, coordination, mood, and physical performance. And there was a study done. I did some research on this in 2026. 89 studies found that travel-related effects in athletes included things that I'm used to: fatigue, sleep disruption, reduced physical performance, and mood changes and cognitive impairment. So how could all this affect Kaye Scott? Look, her body clock may say it's the wrong time to fight. That's the biggest issue, man. Her brain doesn't instantly reset when she lands in America. That's not how that shit works. Her internal circadian clock can remain synchronized to Australian time while she's expected to train, eat, sleep, and eventually fight according to U.S. time. That can create a strange situation, you know what I mean? The clock says sleep, the fight says perform. Athletes can experience fatigue and reduced alertness while their bodies adjust to the new schedule. I just don't know if she came here in enough time. I always think 2 weeks, but she come here during fight week. I think fighters need 2 weeks. That's just me. Reaction time could become extremely important. Boxing is different from running a marathon. You know what I mean? A boxer has to recognize a punch and respond in fractions of a second. So Scott needs to see Claressa's punches because they're going to be coming at her. She got to read feints, move ahead, block or parry, counter, maintain distance. She got to make decisions under pressure. And research on travel and athletes has identified potential effects on reaction time, coordination, and technical performance. This is a fact I'm giving y'all. So for an underdog facing an elite, experienced opponent like Claressa Shields, even a small decline in sharpness could matter. Her footwork, which is extremely important in this fight, could suffer. This might be one of the most overlooked issues. I don't know why she didn't arrive 2 weeks prior. Let you know that Demetrius Salita, he's not looking out for her best interest. Maybe it's a money issue, I don't know. But I would have spent my own money to come out here and chill for a week in a hotel or whatever. I don't care if I'm staying in a different hotel than what the accommodation they've aligned for me. I would have paid my own pocket and came here early and just stayed out of my own pocket at another hotel, and then the next week, transfer over to the hotel they're paying for. But at least I'd be on my body, and my circadian clock would be aligned with, Atlanta time. Kaye Scott needs her eyes. She needs her brain, feet, and hands to operate together, man. So if fatigue affects coordination, her movement can become slightly less precise. And next you know, she's standing in front of Claressa, unnecessary exchanges, and Claressa gets out of within 3. And I'm going to tell you this, someone like Shields, that can be very, very dangerous to be in front of them and for your footwork to be slightly less precise, because Claressa is an opponent with superior experience. And she's going to capitalize on any small positional mistakes Kaye Scott makes. And I'm telling you, she could feel tired before the fight even begins. Jet lag isn't simply I'm sleepy. That shit can involve fatigue, disrupted sleep, altered mood, reduced alertness, And there's another problem. Travel fatigue and jet lag aren't the same thing, people. Travel fatigue and then there's jet lag. It's not the same. Even if Kaye Scott's circadian rhythm adapts reasonably well, sitting on a long haul flight, dealing with airports, disrupted meals, and poor sleep can leave an athlete physically worn down. Reviews of elite athletes have found that long haul travel can disturb recovery and physiological markers, even when measured performance effects aren't always consistent. I just came back from traveling, man. We were gone for about 14 days. It took me like 5 days. It took me, matter of fact, it took me like 2 weeks to finally start to adjust my body, my time. And it really wasn't until my son started school this week that it forced me to get my ass back up at 6 in the morning. I'm getting up at 5 now because I got to take one to football. And now I'm back on schedule. But man, that shit is hard, especially when you don't have to. So she has to force herself. The first couple of days, she should have forced herself to be sleep deprived. Just get up, force your body to get on the American schedule. I'm pretty sure, I hope she's done that, but I'm just telling you. Australia to America is a serious travel demand. I'm just telling you. And this is where Scott's situation becomes interesting. She's not traveling from one American city to another, you know what I mean? She's potentially dealing with international travel. She is not even potentially. She dealt with international travel across multiple zones and could be potentially dealing with the fatigue and jet lag from traveling across multiple zones that results in her still being exhausted on fight night. And I'm being real with you. And shit, research generally finds that eastward travel tends to produce greater circadian disruption than westward travel because the body has to advance its biological clock. The exact impact depends on Scott's origin, travel schedule, arrival date, sleep habits, and individual biology. I don't know when she left. I think she arrived the 11th or the 10th or 11th, but she fights on the 15th. That's horrible, people. You fight on the 15th, you arriving here on the 10th or the 11th? That shit is crazy. Crazy. So I'm just going to say this. I don't want to just say Scott will be jet lagged, so she's going to lose. That's not how it works. I don't want to say that. But I do think it doesn't help her. You know what I mean? I think if Scott gets into the ring and she feels, man, I'm tired, but I can't figure this out. Why am I so tired? That's potentially frustrating. And that's all bad. But this is again why I don't understand why they didn't get her out here 2 weeks prior. Boxers need confidence. If she already knows she's the underdog, 5-1 underdog. So she's already bothered. But if she loses more confidence because of being tired, she's going to feel like I'm not sharp, I'm not fast, I'm not comfortable, I'm not focused. She's going to want to get out the ring. And she may just sit there and Claressa bing bing, and she may just say, all right, that's it. I'm not 100%. I'm gone. I'm not going to sit here and take damage. You know what I'm saying? She will know, her team will know during warm-ups. That's where the questions will start setting in. And against a champion, doubt can become a whole nother opponent. So she could be fighting not only Claressa, but the doubt that's setting in because she knows she's tired. Now, for Claressa Shields, she's already accustomed to the environment. She lives out there. You know what I mean? She don't have any problem. Claressa has an acclimatization advantage simply because she's not dealing with the international travel burden that Kaye Scott's dealing with. Now, doesn't mean that she's the better fighter and better skill fighter. I mean, we think she is, but if she wasn't, that wouldn't mean that all of a sudden she becomes a better fighter overall. But she does have some advantages. You know what I mean? Scott's dealing with travel, time zones, new environment, opponent, fight pressure, especially crazy ass fans, you know what I mean? Claressa talking about breaking her jaw and whoop that trick. She got to deal with all that ignorant ghetto shit. All Claressa Shields got to deal with, okay, I got the opponent and his fight pressure. And of course, they got the trolls out there that harass her, but you know what I mean? Outside of that, really, Claressa is just getting in there and fighting. And that's an important distinction. Scott has a lot more what she has to deal with. Now, what time the fight's going to be, that shit matters. And I don't know exactly when it's going to start. I would assume it's probably starting around 10 o'clock. I think she'll get in the ring maybe at 10. But I'm telling you, if the fight occurs at that time that corresponds to the middle of the night or very early mornings on Scott's biological clock, she could potentially be competing outside her normal performance window if she hasn't acclimated. Circadian rhythms influence body temperature, alertness, sleepiness, and other physiological processes relevant to performance. That's why elite athletes don't simply think, I arrived in the country, so I'm ready. They know that's not how it works. They try to manipulate their sleep and light exposure beforehand, which is what I used to do, and I'm sure most of y'all have done. When you go to other countries, whether you're there temporarily or you're there for 6 months, 7 months, I used to do that. We used to force ourselves to stay up. That shit sucked. But you acclimate pretty quick after that because you want the biological clock to move towards the destination schedule, which is what I'm hoping Kaye Scott is doing. So how Scott can minimize the problem, this is where being professional and that professional preparation, it matters. Elite athletes commonly use strategies involving maybe controlling the light. You got to close the blinds or close the curtains. When I was working up in Alaska, we got up there during the time of the year where it was just light all day. So we had thick blinds, thick curtains, had to make that room dark because, that shit will mess you up. Light is one of the strongest signals for resetting the body's circadian clock. You know what I'm saying? Then you had to have strategic sleep. Rather than simply sleeping whenever exhaustion hits, athletes can structure sleep around the destination schedule, which is what I'm hoping Kaye Scott's doing, and there's not a robust media commitment that's keeping her from getting rest. You know what I'm saying? They could be screwing Scott, folks. When they take all this into consideration, like, nope, we're going to force her to not be able to get her circadian clock where it needs to be. You watch. I'm just telling you, you just never know. And then you got the issue of hydration. Long flights can contribute to dehydration and travel fatigue. So hydration and appropriate fueling are important. And then we just got to talk about, the shifting meals towards local time and creating a new routine and the light movement after flying. You know what I'm saying? She can start to feel stiff without turning recovery into another workout. She got to, be careful coming out here and trying to get back in the swing of things and getting in the flow. That's all I'm saying. So it was important that she arrived early, and it doesn't look like she did, which I don't, again, I'm going to say I don't know why she didn't. But here's the big story for Kaye Scott. If she comes into the fight completely acclimated, then the jet lag becomes a non-story. You know what I mean? If she can get her circadian clock, aligned with the destination, she should be okay. But I'm just saying, she ended up arriving just like shit 2 days ago. I just think, man, she's not gonna be able to sleep well. I think she's gonna sleep poorly, struggle to adjust, and she could enter the ring fatigued, man. I've heard fighters talk about being tired getting in the ring, and now you got another obstacle, and that's why Scott's team should have treated this travel like another part of camp. They should have got her out here earlier. So the fight doesn't begin when the bell rings, you know what I mean? For an international fighter, preparation begins when you get on the plane. To me, Scott should have got out of here like middle of last week. Give her 3 days to acclimate when there's nothing going on, no commitments. She can just come out here and reset and restructure and then go into fight week acclimated. She didn't do that. So right now, looking at Kaye Scott, 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, going up against somebody like Claressa Shields with championship experience. But Scott's team, to me, they needed to look at something much bigger. They should have been looking at, can we get Scott to Atlanta feeling like the best version of Kaye Scott? I don't think they did that. Because if she arrived rested, acclimated, and properly fueled and mentally sharp, then she removes one potential excuse before the first bell. And if she pulls an upset, nobody will care how many time zones she crossed. They'll simply say, Kaye Scott came to America and shocked the world. But if she didn't, well, that's their fault because they should have had a better plan and better structure. Now, what I will say is this before I end this, and this is a very important caveat. Not every athlete, after a long haul travel, experiences a meaningful performance decline. I'm just telling you from my experience. Sometimes you got to get places early, unless you had a discipline and structure to force yourself to get on schedule within a couple days. But I'm looking at the media commitments and everything else. That's what I'm saying. I just think she came during fight week where she's not going to be able to just, do what she wants. No, she's going to have commitments. She got to do what the promoter wants her to do. And that could be all bad. But at the end of the day, it's all about the individual response, which varies considerably. And, performance evidence is going to be mixed. Maybe Kaye Scott's the exception and nothing bothers her. But I'll tell you what, everyone I know, when we've traveled to other countries, everybody catches the ass. Some respond and acclimate quicker than others, but everybody. We always just used to say you got to embrace the suck. Everybody hated that shit. And I'm telling you right now, Kaye Scott's going to hate herself if she comes into fight night against Claressa and during the warm-up, she's tired. She feels jet lag still. She's going to hate herself and kick herself in the butt because she's going to say, I should have just came out there earlier, spent my own money, stayed up in a hotel until fight week, and then transferred over to where Demetrius Salita wanted me, my team, and I to be. Anyway, jet lag, body clock versus Claressa Shields. Ooh-wee. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.